A gang leader shot a veteran single dad in front of terrified kids, but when the town discovered his hidden SEAL Team 6 passed, the entire gang began to crumble in fear, until the gang leader struck back with something no father could ever prepare for. Will courage and faith be enough to save his daughter before it's too late? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun filtered through worn curtains, casting a gentle glow across Jack Hayes' small kitchen. His calloused hands moved with practiced efficiency as he stirred pancake batter in a mixing bowl. The familiar rhythm of whisking helped quiet his mind, though the empty chair at the kitchen table still made his heart ache, even after all these years. "Lily, breakfast in 5 minutes, sweetheart," he called up the stairs, his deep voice carrying through the modest 2-story home. The sound of hurried footsteps and a cheerful, "Coming, Dad," brought a smile to his tired face. He'd worked the night shift at the mall as a security guard, catching only a few hours of sleep before rising to make breakfast. In 2 hours, he'd head to his day job at Henderson's Hardware, but these morning moments with Lily were sacred. Jack poured the batter onto the hot griddle, watching as perfect circles formed. Sarah had taught him how to make pancakes just the way Lily liked them, golden brown with slightly crispy edges. The memory of his late wife's patient instructions still felt fresh, though the pain had dulled to a familiar ache. "Dad, have you seen my blue folder?" Lily bounded into the kitchen, her brown hair escaping from a hastily made ponytail. She wore her favorite purple sweater, the one Sarah had knitted for her last birthday. "Check the living room couch," Jack replied, flipping a pancake with expert timing. "You were doing homework there last night." Lily darted away, her sock-covered feet sliding on the hardwood floor. Jack watched her go, marveling at how she carried Sarah's spirit, that same boundless energy and kind heart. "Found it," she announced triumphantly, returning to plop down at the kitchen table. Her eyes lit up at the stack of pancakes Jack set before her. "You remembered the chocolate chips. What kind of dad would I be if I forgot?" He ruffled her hair affectionately, then sat down with his own plate. The chair across from them remained empty, as it had for the past 3 years. Between bites, Lily chatted about her upcoming science project and the youth group meeting at church later that week. Jack listened intently, cherishing these ordinary moments that meant everything to him. "Mrs. Peterson said I might get to help with the little kids at the youth center," Lily said proudly. "Since you're already volunteering there and everything." Jack nodded, warmth filling his chest. The church youth center had become their second home, a place where they both found purpose in helping others. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Just remember to keep up with your homework, too." "I will." Lily glanced at the clock and quickly shoveled in her last bite. "Oh, I better hurry. Jenny's mom is waiting to walk with us." Jack stood, gathering their plates. "Got everything? Homework? Lunch money? Check and check." Lily patted her backpack. She paused, then wrapped her arms around his waist in a tight hug. "Thanks for breakfast, Dad. You make the best pancakes." Jack held her close for a moment, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Have a great day at school, kiddo. I love you." "Love you too." She pulled away, then stopped at the door. "Don't forget to rest before work, okay? You look tired." Jack's heart swelled at her concern. So much like her mother, always taking care of others. "I promise. Now scoot, or you'll be late." He watched from the front door as Lily joined Jenny and her mom on the sidewalk. The morning air was crisp, carrying the first hints of autumn. Lily's ponytail bounced with each step, her laughter floating back to him as she chatted with her friend. Jack closed his eyes briefly, offering a silent prayer of thanks. Despite everything they'd lost, despite the long hours and tight budget, they had each other. They had their community at the youth center. They had hope. Opening his eyes, he watched until Lily turned the corner toward school, her purple sweater bright against the gray morning. His daughter's joy was worth every sacrifice, every exhausting double shift, every moment of missing Sarah. A few houses down, a black SUV sat idle with darkly tinted windows, but Jack's attention remained on the space where Lily had disappeared from view, his heart full of gratitude for another ordinary morning that felt nothing short of miraculous. The dishes could wait a few hours. His body demanded sleep before his shift at Henderson's, and he'd learned the hard way that running on empty helped no one. As he turned to head inside, his thoughts were already on the youth center meeting that evening, where he'd help coach basketball and maybe change a few young lives for the better. Sarah would have been proud of them both, he thought. They were building something beautiful from their brokenness, one pancake breakfast at a time. The hardware store's old bell chimed as Jack Hayes pulled the door closed, keys jingling in his weathered hands. Sunset painted the small town streets in deep oranges and purples, while the first stars began peeking through scattered clouds. He double-checked the lock, an old habit from years of military service that never quite left him. The sudden wail of police sirens cut through the evening quiet. Jack's head snapped toward the sound, his body tensing instinctively. The sirens grew louder, then faded as they raced down Main Street, their red and blue lights reflecting off storefront windows. "They won't do nothing," muttered Mrs. Chen from her corner store across the street. The elderly woman stood in her doorway, arms crossed, watching the police cars disappear around the corner. "Just like last week, when those troublemakers harassed my customers." Before Jack could respond, the rumble of motorcycles and souped-up cars filled the air. A convoy of vehicles turned onto their street. 3 motorcycles, 2 modified muscle cars, and a black SUV with tinted windows. The vehicles moved slowly, deliberately, like predators sizing up their territory. Young men spilled out of the cars, their faces hard with false bravado. They wore matching leather jackets with razor blade emblems on the back. Their leader emerged from the SUV, Marcus Razor Kane, tall and lean, with a swagger that spoke of casual cruelty. "Watch this," one of the gang members called out, pulling spray cans from his jacket. Red paint hissed against the brick wall of the corner store. Others joined in, their laughter echoing off buildings as crude symbols and threats took shape. Mrs. Chen took a step forward. "Stop that! This is my store!" The gang members just laughed harder. One of them picked up a loose piece of concrete from the curb and hurled it through her front window. The glass exploded inward with a terrible crash. Jack's muscles coiled, ready to move, but he forced himself to stay still, remembering his daughter waiting at home. He'd seen enough combat to know when a situation could spiral out of control. Instead, he watched as the gang members continued their destruction, memorizing faces and details. More windows shattered. A few passers-by hurried past with lowered heads, clutching their bags closer. Some took out phones to record the vandalism from a safe distance, but no one dared to intervene. The police sirens had long since faded to nothing. After what felt like an eternity, the gang grew bored. They piled back into their vehicles, revving engines and squealing tires as they peeled away. The acrid smell of burnt rubber lingered in their wake. As soon as they were gone, Jack crossed the street to Mrs. Chen's store. Glass crunched under his boots as he approached. The elderly woman stood amid the wreckage of her front window, her shoulders slumped but her chin held high. "Let me help you clean this up," Jack said softly, already looking for a broom. "You don't have to, Mr. Hayes. You should get home to your little girl. Lily's at her friend's house for another hour." Jack found a dustpan behind the counter. "Besides, this won't take long with 2 people working." They worked in comfortable silence, sweeping up the scattered glass and boarding up the window with plywood Jack brought from the hardware store. Other neighbors gradually emerged to help, though their assistance came with worried whispers. "Did you see their jackets? That's Razor's gang. I heard they took over the whole east side of the county. Police won't even go near their territory anymore." Jack kept working, letting the conversations wash over him. His movements were efficient, precise, skills learned long ago that now served a different purpose. As he worked, he noticed Mrs. Chen's hands trembling slightly as she picked up pieces of her broken inventory. "They'll be back," she said quietly, so only Jack could hear. "They always come back. We'll figure something out," Jack replied, laying a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone in this." It took nearly an hour to get the store secured, and the worst of the mess cleaned up. Jack gathered his tools, ready to head home to Lily. The street had grown darker, most shops closed early after the gang's display. He took his usual route home, past the old movie theater and through the park. The streetlights cast long shadows across his path, and the evening had grown unusually quiet. No kids playing basketball at the court, no couples walking their dogs. As he passed a narrow alley between buildings, movement caught his eye. There, leaning against a brick wall, stood Razor Kane. The gang leader's face was half hidden in shadow, but his teeth gleamed in a mocking smile. Their eyes met across the distance. Razor's grin widened, challenging, almost daring Jack to say something, to do something. The young man's posture radiated arrogance, one hand casually resting near his waistband, where the outline of a weapon was visible. Jack kept walking, his pace steady, his expression neutral. He'd faced down worse threats in worse places. But as a father now, he knew the real meaning of having something to lose. So he walked on, feeling Razor's eyes boring into his back. Knowing this wouldn't be their last encounter, he could still hear the gang leader's soft, taunting laughter echoing off the alley walls as he turned the corner toward home. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the church youth center's high windows, casting long shadows across the worn basketball court. The familiar squeak of sneakers and thump of basketballs echoed through the space as Jack Hayes stood near the bleachers, arms crossed, watching the teenagers play with quiet attention. Tommy Martinez, a lanky 15-year-old with too much attitude and too little confidence, fumbled a pass. "Come on, man!" his teammate shouted. Jack noticed Tommy's shoulders slump. "Hey, Tommy," Jack called out, his voice firm but kind. "Remember what we practiced. Square your shoulders, eyes on the target." He demonstrated the stance, and Tommy nodded, determination replacing disappointment on his young face. The game resumed, and Jack couldn't help but smile as Tommy made his next pass perfectly. These moments made the long hours worthwhile. Seeing kids find their strength, their worth. The youth center wasn't much. Just an old court, some bleachers, and a few beaten-up basketballs. But it was safe. That's what mattered. The heavy double doors crashed open, flooding the court with harsh afternoon light. Jack's muscles tensed instinctively as 5 figures swaggered in, led by Marcus Razor Kane. The gang leader wore his signature leather jacket despite the heat, a cruel smile playing on his lips. The basketball game stuttered to a halt. Tommy froze mid-dribble, his eyes wide with recognition and fear. "Don't stop on our account," Razor called out, his voice carrying across the sudden silence. "We're just here to scout some talent." His gang members spread out along the edges of the court, predatory grins on their faces. Jack moved forward, placing himself between the gang and the teenagers. His steps were measured, deliberate. "This is a youth center," he said, keeping his voice level. "You need to leave." Razor's eyes narrowed, but his smile didn't waver. "That's not very welcoming, is it? We're here to offer these boys something better than shooting hoops." He raised his voice, addressing the teenagers directly. "How many of you are tired of being nobody? Want to make real money? Be somebody people respect?" Jack saw Tommy shift uncomfortably, and several other boys exchanged uncertain glances. "They already are somebody," Jack said firmly. "And they deserve better than what you're selling." Razor took a step closer, his smile morphing into a sneer. "Better than what I'm selling? What are you selling them, old man? Minimum wage jobs and false hope?" "I'm selling them a future," Jack replied, not backing down. "One that doesn't end in jail, or worse." The gang leader's face darkened. He gestured to his crew, who began moving toward the group of teenagers. Several boys backed away, but Tommy stood frozen, caught between fear and dangerous curiosity. Jack moved quickly, positioning himself in front of Tommy. "Last warning," he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority that came from years of combat experience. "Walk away." Instead of retreating, Razor lunged forward, shoving Jack hard. The former SEAL didn't budge, but Tommy stumbled backward with a yelp of fear. Another gang member grabbed for the boy. What happened next was pure instinct. Jack's body responded with the fluid efficiency of countless training exercises. He pushed Tommy clear of danger while deflecting the gang member's grab. "Everyone back," he ordered the teenagers, who scrambled toward the bleachers. Razor's face contorted with rage at being challenged. His hand disappeared into his jacket, and Jack's combat-trained eyes caught the telltale movement. "Gun!" he shouted, already moving to shield Tommy. The crack of the pistol echoed off the gymnasium walls like a thunderclap. Jack felt the impact high at his left shoulder. A familiar burning sensation he hadn't felt since his last deployment. Screams erupted from the bleachers as he staggered but remained standing. "Nobody disrespects me," Razor snarled, his hand shaking slightly as he held the smoking gun. "Nobody!" Jack pressed his right hand against his shoulder, feeling warm blood seeping between his fingers. Despite the pain, his voice remained steady. "You just proved exactly what I was saying about you," he said through gritted teeth. Red and blue lights suddenly flashed through the windows. Someone had called the police. Razor and his gang bolted for the side exit, leaving chaos in their wake. Jack's knees finally buckled as the adrenaline began to fade. Tommy and several other boys rushed to his side, helping him stay upright until he could lean against the bleachers. "Mr. Hayes!" Tommy's voice cracked with panic. "You're bleeding!" "I'm okay, son," Jack managed, though the room was starting to spin. "Everyone else all right?" The sound of sirens grew closer, and paramedics burst through the doors with their equipment. As they rushed to Jack's side, an elderly church volunteer who had witnessed everything spoke in a trembling voice that carried across the now quiet gymnasium. "Lord have mercy," she whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. "That man's not just anyone, he's SEAL Team 6. The words rippled through the crowd like a wave, changing the looks of shock to ones of awe as the paramedics carefully lifted Jack onto a stretcher. The last thing he saw before they wheeled him away was Tommy's face, tears streaming down his cheeks, mouth forming the words, "Thank you." The steady beep of hospital monitors pulled Jack from darkness. His shoulder throbbed with each heartbeat, a dull ache that seemed to spread through his entire left side. As his eyes adjusted to the dim fluorescent light, he felt a small, warm hand clasped in his. Lily was curled up in a worn hospital chair, her golden hair spilling across the armrest. Her cheeks were stained with dried tears, but her breathing was steady in sleep. Jack's throat tightened at the sight of her, his brave girl refusing to leave his side. "Hey, sweetie," he whispered, though he knew she couldn't hear him. His voice came out raspy and weak. A soft knock at the door drew his attention. Pastor Green entered quietly, his weathered face creasing with relief when he saw Jack awake. "Welcome back," the pastor said softly, mindful of Lily. He pulled up another chair. "You gave us quite a scare." Jack tried to shift position but winced at the pain. "The boy, is he okay?" "Tommy's fine, thanks to you." Pastor Green leaned forward, his eyes serious. "Jack, what you did, that was something special. Standing up to those thugs, protecting that child without hesitation. Anyone would have done the same," Jack mumbled, uncomfortable with the praise. The pastor shook his head. "No, they wouldn't. And now we know why you're different." He paused meaningfully. "Word's gotten out about your service record. SEAL Team 6. That's quite something to keep quiet about all these years." Jack's jaw tightened. He'd worked hard to keep that part of his life private, to be just another struggling single dad. "Pastor, I'd rather not—" "I understand." Pastor Green held up his hands. "But you should know. The town's talking. For the first time since these gangsters showed up, people are feeling something other than fear. They're feeling hope." Throughout the morning, a steady stream of visitors trickled in. Mrs. Rodriguez from the hardware store brought homemade soup. Mr. Chen from the corner market left fresh fruit and get-well cards from his grandchildren. Each visitor's eyes held a new light of recognition, a mix of gratitude and awe that made Jack increasingly uneasy. Lily stirred around noon, her eyes flying wide when she saw him awake. "Daddy!" She launched herself carefully against his good side, burying her face in his chest. "Hey, princess," he murmured into her hair. "I'm okay. Everything's okay." She pulled back, wiping her eyes. "I was so scared. But then everyone kept talking about how brave you were, about you being a hero in the Navy." She tilted her head. "Why didn't you ever tell me about SEAL Team 6? Jack sighed. "That was a different life, sweetheart. It's not who I am anymore." "But you're still brave," she insisted. "You saved Tommy." From his hospital bed, Jack could see through the window into the parking lot below. Throughout the afternoon, he noticed Razor's men driving past slowly in their black SUVs, trying to look intimidating. But something had changed. Their usual swagger seemed forced, their threatening gestures more theatrical than menacing. Two of Razor's younger recruits walked past the hospital entrance, attempting their usual tough guy routine. Jack overheard one whisper to the other, "You think it's true? About him being some kind of special forces killer?" "Man, I heard SEAL Team 6 don't mess around. They're like the elite of the elite. Razor says he ain't scared." "Yeah, but did you see how his hands were shaking at the meeting?" Their voices faded as they hurried past, glancing nervously at the hospital windows. As evening approached, Lily had dozed off again, exhausted from her vigil. Jack was about to suggest she go home with Pastor Green when he noticed movement outside. People were gathering in the parking lot, first just a few, then dozens. They carried candles, the small flames flickering in the growing darkness. Jack recognized faces from all over town: shopkeepers, teachers, parents from Lily's school, teenagers from the youth center. Tommy Martinez stood with his mother, both holding candles high. Pastor Green appeared at Jack's bedside again, smiling at the scene below. They'd been organizing this all day, a show of solidarity. Jack watched, something tight and warm building in his chest as more people joined the vigil. The candlelight seemed to push back the shadows, creating a gentle glow that spread across the gathering crowd. Mrs. Rodriguez's voice carried up through the window, strong and clear. "We stand with Jack Hayes!" Others took up the call, their voices joining together in the growing darkness. Jack saw elderly Mr. Chen standing proud despite his cane, young mothers holding their children close, teenagers who usually tried so hard to look tough now standing tall with purpose instead of posturing. Lily stirred at the sound, moving to the window. Her eyes widened at the sight below. "Look, Daddy," she whispered, pressing her hand against the glass. "They're not afraid anymore." Jack watched the candles below, each one a tiny spark of defiance against the fear that had gripped their community. For the first time since Razor's gang had arrived, he felt something shift in the air, a current of strength, of possibility, of hope. These weren't hardened warriors or trained fighters. They were ordinary people finding their courage, standing together despite their fear. And somehow, impossibly, they were looking to him to lead the way. The light of their candles reflected in the hospital window, transforming the glass into a constellation of warm, steady stars. Jack reached for Lily's hand, holding it tight as they watched hope flicker to life in the gathering dark. The afternoon sun beat down on Jack's back as he stepped out of the hospital's sliding doors, Lily bouncing beside him with his small duffel bag. His left arm was secured in a blue sling, and despite the painkillers, each movement sent a twinge through his shoulder. "Look, Dad." Lily pointed to their driveway, where covered dishes and flower bouquets lined the front steps of their modest home. "Mrs. Peterson made her famous lasagna, and I think I see Mr. Robert's apple pie." Jack managed a small smile, but his eyes scanned the street out of habit, checking for unfamiliar vehicles or suspicious movement. The attention made him uneasy. He'd spent years building a quiet life, keeping his past buried deep where it couldn't touch Lily. Inside, their kitchen counter disappeared under casseroles, sympathy cards, and hand-drawn pictures from the youth center kids. Lily arranged the flowers in mason jars, humming as she worked. "Everyone at school says you're a hero," she said, carefully positioning a bouquet of daisies. "Jenny's mom told her you were in SEAL Team 6. Is that true?" Jack sank into a kitchen chair, his good hand rubbing his temple. "That was a long time ago, sweetheart. But why didn't you tell me? Some things, some memories are better left in the past." Before Lily could respond, a sharp crack split the air, followed by screaming. Jack was on his feet instantly, muscle memory overriding pain. Through their kitchen window, orange flames licked the evening sky. "Stay here," he ordered Lily, already heading for the door. "Dad, no, you're hurt. Lock the doors. Call 911. The Martinez family's grocery store, just 2 blocks away, was engulfed in flames. Smoke poured from broken windows as people gathered on the sidewalk. Maria Martinez sobbed in her husband's arms, their teenage son, Miguel, staring at the inferno in shock. "Someone help!" Mrs. Martinez cried. "Our cat is still inside!" Jack spotted a garden hose coiled against the building next door. "Miguel," he called, "get that hose running. Mrs. Peterson, gather more hoses from the neighbors. Everyone else form a line." Despite his injury, Jack's commanding voice cut through the chaos. People moved quickly, passing hoses and buckets down the line. Sirens wailed in the distance, but they all knew the volunteer fire department was 10 minutes away. Through the smoke, Jack caught glimpses of black spray paint on the store's brick wall. "Razor owns this town." The cat eventually emerged on its own, fur singed but alive. When the fire trucks arrived, the community's efforts had kept the flames from spreading to neighboring buildings. The grocery store, however, was a total loss. Jack found the Martinez family huddled on a neighbor's porch, sharing blankets and coffee. Mrs. Martinez's eyes were red from crying. "We put everything we had into that store, Mr. Martinez said quietly. 20 years of work. You're not alone," Jack replied, his good hand squeezing Mr. Martinez's shoulder. "The whole town is with you." "But Razor," Miguel started, fear cracking his voice. "We'll rebuild," Jack cut in firmly. "Together." As the crowd dispersed and the fire crew packed up their gear, Jack noticed nervous whispers passing between neighbors. They'd shown courage today, but fear still gripped them. Razor's message was clear. Stand with Jack Hayes, and you'll pay the price. The setting sun painted the church steps deep orange as Jack sat alone, staring at the blackened ruins across the street. The pain in his shoulder had turned sharp and insistent, but he barely noticed it. Steam still rose from the wreckage, carrying the acrid smell of burned dreams. A paper sign fluttered in the evening breeze, somehow surviving the fire. Martinez Family Grocery, serving our community since 2003. Jack watched it tear free and drift away. Another piece of his neighbors' lives reduced to ash. He knew this was just the beginning. Razor wouldn't stop until he'd crushed every spark of resistance, every hint of hope. The gang leader had made his move, targeting innocent people to prove his point. The message was personal. This is what happens when you dare to stand against me. Jack's fingers traced the rough stone of the church steps, remembering the youth center kids who played here after services, the Martinez family handing out popsicles on hot summer days. This was more than just a neighborhood. It was a family. And now that family was under attack because he'd failed to stay invisible. The charred storefront stood as a monument to his mistake, a brutal reminder that his past could never truly be buried. He tried so hard to build a peaceful life for Lily, to be nothing more than a quiet single dad who worked at the hardware store. But violence had found them anyway. And now, innocent people were paying the price for his moment of courage. The smell of smoke clung to his clothes as he sat in the growing darkness, his shoulder aching in time with his heartbeat. The ruined store seemed to mock him with its shadows, whispering that this was only the first casualty in Razor's campaign of terror. The gang leader had made his intentions crystal clear. He would burn it all down, piece by piece, until nothing remained of their community but fear and ashes. Mr. Martinez's broken voice echoed in his mind. 20 years of work. 2 decades of early mornings, late nights, and sacrifices, all gone in an hour of flames. How many more dreams would Razor destroy? How many more families would suffer because Jack had dared to stand up? The church bell tolled 8 o'clock, its solemn rings carrying across the smoke-filled street. Jack remained motionless on the steps, a solitary figure in the gathering dusk, watching ash settle on the sidewalk where children had played just that morning. He didn't need to imagine what would come next. Razor had shown his hand, and the stakes were clear. This wasn't just about Jack anymore. It was about every person who called this neighborhood home. The evening settled over their small home like a warm blanket. Jack stood in Lily's doorway, watching as she climbed into bed, her favorite stuffed elephant tucked under one arm. Her room was a testament to childhood innocence. Walls painted soft purple, fairy lights strung above her bed, and photos of happier times decorating her corkboard. "Dad?" Lily's voice was small, betraying a hint of worry. "Are you sure you're okay? Your shoulder, I mean." Jack crossed the room, careful not to wince as he sat on the edge of her bed. The pain medication was wearing off, but he wouldn't let her see that. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Takes more than that to keep your old man down." She reached out and touched his sling gently. "You were so brave at the youth center, like a real superhero." "Hey now." Jack smoothed her hair back just like Sarah used to do. The memory of his late wife brought a familiar ache to his chest. The real brave ones were those kids who stood their ground. Sometimes the hardest thing is just showing up. "But aren't you scared? Of Razor and his gang?" Jack took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means doing what's right even when you are scared." He tucked the blanket around her shoulders. "And you don't need to worry about any of that. You're safe here. I promise." Lily's eyes were getting heavy, but she fought sleep. "Will you tell me a story? About when you were in the Navy?" "Not tonight, kiddo." Jack kissed her forehead. "But I'll tell you what my team used to say before every mission. Clear eyes, full hearts. Can't lose." Lily finished with a sleepy smile. It was their private ritual now. These words he'd adapted from his SEAL days into something gentler, something meant for bedtime rather than battle. Jack stood, adjusting her nightlight. "Sweet dreams, Lily Pad. Night, Daddy. I love you. Love you more." He left her door cracked open, just the way she liked it. In the hallway, he paused to roll his shoulder carefully, testing its range of motion. The doctor had said 6 weeks minimum for recovery, but Jack knew he couldn't afford that luxury. Not with Razor's threats escalating. The house creaked and settled around him as he made his way to the kitchen. A stack of get well cards covered the counter, along with casserole dishes from neighbors he barely knew. The community's support was overwhelming, but it also made him uncomfortable. He'd spent so long trying to blend in, to be unremarkable. The crash came without warning. An explosion of glass and brick that sent Jack instinctively diving for cover. His military training kicked in as he hit the floor, ignoring the screaming pain in his shoulder. 2 projectiles had smashed through the living room window, sending shards of glass skittering across the hardwood. "Lily!" He was on his feet in an instant, racing toward her room. She met him in the hallway, eyes wide with terror. "Dad, what was that?" "Stay back," he ordered, guiding her away from the broken glass. His heart hammered against his ribs as he scanned the street through the jagged hole in the window. No movement, but that meant nothing. They could still be out there, watching. When he was certain there was no immediate follow-up attack, Jack approached the bricks lying amid the glass. One had a piece of paper wrapped around it, secured with rubber bands. The message was spray-painted in harsh red letters. "Next time, it's her." The words hit him like a physical blow. His hands shook as he crumpled the paper, rage and fear warring in his chest. Behind him, Lily stood trembling in her pajamas. "Come here," he said softly, opening his good arm. She ran to him, burying her face in his chest. He could feel her crying, silent tears soaking into his shirt. "I've got you. You're safe." But the words felt hollow now. The sanctuary of their home had been violated, and worse, they'd threatened his little girl, his entire world. "Let's get you back to bed," he said, keeping his voice steady despite the storm building inside him. "You can sleep in my room tonight." After making sure Lily was settled in his bed, Jack methodically checked every lock, every window. He swept up the glass, his movements precise and controlled, but his mind was racing. They'd crossed a line. Threatening him was one thing, but threatening Lily? That wasn't something he could let stand. In the kitchen, Jack pulled out an old wooden box from the highest cabinet. Inside, wrapped in soft cloth, lay his SEAL Team 6 insignia. He hadn't looked at it in years, had tried to leave that life behind. But as he traced the metal edge with his finger, memories flooded back of brotherhood, of purpose, of fighting for something bigger than himself. The insignia caught the dim kitchen light as Jack set it on the table. He stared at it, feeling the weight of his past and the urgency of his present converge into a single crystal-clear moment of decision. "If it's war they want," he whispered into the darkness. "I've fought wars before." The morning sun painted long shadows across the church steps as Jack pulled into the empty parking lot. His shoulder still ached, a constant reminder of what was at stake. He found Pastor Green already waiting by the entrance, his weathered face creased with both concern and hope. "Morning, Pastor," Jack said, climbing out of his old pickup truck. The gravel crunched beneath his boots as he approached. "Jack," Pastor Green's warm smile was reassuring. "I've been praying about your request. The basement isn't much, but it's yours if you think it can help." They walked down the creaky wooden stairs to the church basement. The space was large but dusty, filled with folding chairs stacked against the walls and old Sunday school supplies in corners. Sunlight filtered through small ground-level windows, casting weak beams across the concrete floor. "It's perfect," Jack said, already mapping out the space in his mind. "We'll need to clear these chairs, maybe get some mats." "Already taken care of." Pastor Green gestured to a pile of exercise mats in the corner. "Borrowed them from the high school gym. Principal Thompson was more than happy to help." Jack nodded, touched by the support. "Thank you. I know this isn't exactly typical church activity." "Neither is letting gangs terrorize our community," Pastor Green replied firmly. "Sometimes faith requires action, Jack. Even Jesus drove the money changers from the temple." People began arriving shortly after 7. They came in ones and twos, looking nervous but determined. Tom from the hardware store, Sarah who ran the diner, the Wilson brothers from their family farm, even young Marcus, barely 18, who bagged groceries at the supermarket. Each face carried the same mix of fear and resolve. Jack stood before them, his military-bearing automatic, despite his civilian clothes. "First thing you need to understand, this isn't about revenge. It's not about being tough or playing hero. It's about protecting our community, our families." He walked slowly across the room, making eye contact with each person. "We're going to learn discipline first. Awareness. How to work together. The best defense is avoiding conflict entirely." "But what if they come at us with guns?" Marcus asked, his voice cracking slightly. Then we're smart about it, Jack replied. We learn to read situations, to de-escalate when possible, to protect the vulnerable. No one here is becoming a vigilante. He started them with basic exercises, learning to stand properly, to breathe under stress, to move as a coordinated group. Hours passed as they practiced simple defensive stances and escape techniques. Jack corrected postures, demonstrated proper form, always emphasizing teamwork and protection over aggression. Sarah struggled with a particular movement, frustration evident on her face. Jack paused beside her. Remember when you organized the town festival last year? How you coordinated all those different vendors and activities? She looked surprised. Yes, but what does that have to do with? You already know how to think strategically, how to handle complex situations, Jack explained. This is just applying those same skills differently. Trust yourself. The morning wore on. Sweat-darkened t-shirts and breathing grew heavy, but no one complained. They helped each other up after falls, offered encouragement, shared water bottles. Jack saw something building between them. Not just skills, but confidence, unity. Tom, wiping his brow with a bandana, spoke up during a break. You know, I've lived here 30 years. Never thought I'd be doing anything like this. But it feels right, doesn't it? Standing together? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. Jack watched them gather in small clusters, discussing what they'd learned, planning how to practice at home. This was what he'd hoped for. Not just physical preparation, but a community finding its strength. Remember, Jack said as they prepared to leave, everything we do is about protection, about making our town safer for everyone, especially our children. Carry that purpose with you. They filed out, tired but standing straighter than when they'd arrived. Many stopped to shake Jack's hand or offer quiet thanks. Pastor Green, who had been watching from the stairs, helped Jack gather the mats. You're good at this, the pastor observed. Teaching, leading, they trust you. Jack shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. They just needed someone to show them they're stronger than they thought. After securing the basement, Jack climbed the stairs to the main church. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the wooden pews. Movement caught his eye. Lily sat in the front row, her legs swinging, bent over her sketchbook. She looked up as he approached, her face bright with pride. Dad, look what I drew! In her notebook was a carefully detailed sketch of a figure that was unmistakably him, but wearing a cape and standing tall against a shadowy background. The artistic talent surprised him. She'd captured his stance perfectly, though the superhero edition made him smile. It's you, she explained unnecessarily. Protecting everyone, like you always do. Jack felt his throat tighten with emotion. He sat beside her, pulling her close with his good arm, and studied the drawing. In Lily's eyes, he wasn't just a wounded veteran or a grieving widower. He was something more, someone who could help make their world better. The afternoon sun warmed the park benches as Jack and Lily sat enjoying their ice cream cones. After the intensity of the morning's training session, the simple pleasure of watching his daughter lick vanilla ice cream felt like a precious gift. A light breeze rustled through the oak trees overhead, carrying the sounds of children playing nearby. You got a little. Jack gestured to a spot of ice cream on Lily's nose. She giggled and wiped it away with her sleeve. Dad, that's not how you're supposed to do it, she said, mimicking her mother's old tone of mock disapproval. The familiar gesture made Jack's heart ache with bittersweet warmth. Lily reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper, decorated with careful colored pencil drawings along the edges. I wrote this for you, she said, suddenly shy as she handed it to him. Jack carefully unfolded the letter, mindful of his still tender shoulder. The paper was covered in Lily's neat handwriting, each word clearly chosen with care. Dear Dad, I know you don't like it when people call you a hero, but that's what you are to me. Not just because you were in the Navy, or because you're brave, but because you always help people, even when it's hard. Mom used to say that real courage isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the right thing even when you are scared. I see how you're helping everyone be stronger, just like you helped me be strong after Mom died. I want you to know that I'm really proud to be your daughter. Love, Lily. Jack had to blink hard several times, his ice cream forgotten as emotion tightened his throat. He pulled Lily close with his good arm, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Thank you, sweetheart, he managed. This means more to me than you know." A shadow fell across their bench. Jack tensed instinctively, but when he looked up, he saw a teenage boy standing awkwardly before them. The boy wore an oversized hoodie, despite the warm weather, his hands shoved deep in the pockets. Jack recognized him as one of Razor's crew members. He'd seen him during confrontations around town. "Mr. Hayes?" The boy's voice cracked slightly. Can I talk to you?" Jack studied him carefully. The boy's eyes darted nervously, scanning the park as if expecting trouble. There was fear there, but also something else. Desperation. "What's your name?" Jack asked, keeping his voice neutral. Miguel Alvarez." The boy swallowed hard. "I know you probably don't want anything to do with me, but I need help." Jack glanced at Lily, who watched the exchange with quiet concern. "Lily, honey, why don't you go try out the swings? Stay where I can see you." She nodded understanding and walked away, though Jack noticed she kept glancing back at them. "Sit down," Jack said, gesturing to the empty space on the bench. Miguel perched on the edge like he might need to run at any moment. "I want out," Miguel blurted, his words tumbling out in a rush. "The gang, Razor's crew. I never meant to get so deep into it. At first, it just seemed like hanging out, you know. But now," he shuddered. "The things they're doing, the things they want us to do. I can't sleep at night." Jack remained silent, letting the boy talk. Years of military experience had taught him the value of listening first. "My mom works 2 jobs, Miguel continued, staring at his hands. "She tries so hard, but after my dad left, I thought the gang could give me what was missing. But it's all fake, just violence and fear." He looked up at Jack, his eyes pleading. "I've seen how you're helping people, teaching them to be strong the right way. I want that. Please, I'll do anything." Jack weighed his options carefully. Trust had to be earned, especially given Miguel's background, but he also saw something familiar in the boy's desperate desire for guidance. He'd seen it in many young recruits during his military days. "Why should I trust you?" Jack asked directly. "How do I know this isn't some sort of trick?" Miguel pulled up his sleeve, revealing a nasty bruise. "Razor did this yesterday when I questioned one of his orders. Said next time it would be worse." His voice shook. "I'm not asking you to trust me right away. Just give me a chance to prove myself. Please." Jack studied the bruise, then looked at Miguel's face. Fear was there, yes, but also determination. Sometimes, he knew, the bravest step was admitting you needed help. "It won't be easy," Jack warned. "Getting out of that life takes more than just wanting it. You'll have to work hard, prove yourself trustworthy, maybe even help protect others who want out too. Are you ready for that?" Miguel nodded emphatically. "Yes, sir. Whatever it takes." "Come to training tomorrow morning," Jack said finally. "Early, 7 a.m. at the church. We'll start there." He fixed Miguel with a stern look. "But understand this. One wrong move, one hint that you're playing both sides, and we're done. Clear?" "Crystal clear, sir, thank you." Relief flooded Miguel's face. "I won't let you down. We'll see," Jack replied, though not unkindly. "Now, go home. Your mother's probably worried." Miguel stood, shoving his hands back in his pockets. He took a few steps, then turned back. "Mr. Hayes, thank you for listening. Most people just see the hoodie and run the other way." Jack watched the boy hurry away, his posture already somehow lighter. Lily came running back from the swings, her face flushed with exercise. "Is he going to be okay, Dad?" she asked, showing the same compassion her mother had always possessed. "I hope so, sweetheart," Jack replied, standing up. "Sometimes people just need someone to believe in them." As they gathered their things to leave, neither noticed the dark figure watching from behind a distant tree. Razor's fingers dug into the rough bark as he observed Miguel's betrayal, his face twisted with rage. One of his most promising recruits, turning to the very man who threatened everything Razor had built. This couldn't stand. This wouldn't stand. A gentle breeze carried the aroma of fresh-baked bread through the streets of the small town. Outside the church, Mrs. Thompson, her silver hair tied back in a neat bun, balanced 3 casserole dishes in her weathered hands. Her famous chicken pot pie had been feeding the community for 40 years, but today it meant something more. "For the volunteers," she said, pressing the warm dishes into Jack's hands. Her eyes crinkled with determination. "They need their strength." Jack nodded, touched by the gesture. "Thank you, ma'am. This means a lot." All around them, the town was stirring with new life. Mr. Chen from the hardware store drilled extra deadbolts onto doors, showing homeowners how to secure their windows properly. Down the street, the Martinez brothers reinforced shop entrances with steel frames, their tools clicking rhythmically in the morning air. "My Carlos says you're teaching them well," Mrs. Thompson added, patting Jack's arm. "He comes home tired but standing taller." Inside the church basement, Jack found his growing group of volunteers sharing Mrs. Thompson's pot pie during their break. Miguel, the former gang member, sat quietly in the corner. But today he wasn't alone. Sarah, the librarian's daughter, had pulled her chair next to his, offering him a bottle of water. "Remember," Jack addressed the group, his voice steady and calm, "what we're doing here isn't about fighting. It's about protecting. About standing together." The afternoon sun streamed through the church's stained glass windows as Jack led them in prayer. They formed a circle, holding hands, young and old, former strangers now united. "Faith is stronger than fear," he reminded them, his words echoing in the quiet space. "We're not alone in this." Outside, children had taken over the sidewalks with chalk. 8-year-old Tommy drew a wobbly but enthusiastic superhero wearing what looked like Navy SEAL gear. His sister Jenny wrote, "Hope lives here," in bright purple letters. Parents who once hurried their kids indoors now watched with quiet pride. Lily joined the chalk artists, adding her own touch, a heart surrounded by stars. She looked up at her father with a smile that reminded him so much of her mother. "Dad, look what we're making!" The afternoon melted into evening, and someone, Jack suspected Mrs. Rodriguez, had strung lights between the trees in the churchyard. They twinkled like earthbound stars, casting a warm glow over the gathered community. The scent of grilled hamburgers and Mrs. Thompson's famous apple pie filled the air. Someone had brought an old radio, and soft music drifted across the yard. Couples began to sway to the gentle rhythm. Mr. and Mrs. Chen, married 50 years, showed the younger ones how to waltz. Even Miguel cracked a genuine smile as Sarah's grandmother taught him the basic steps. "May I have this dance?" Lily stood before Jack, attempting a formal curtsy that made him chuckle. She was wearing the dress her mother had bought her last Christmas, the blue one with tiny flowers. Jack took his daughter's hand, his heart full. They moved to the music, Lily standing on his feet like she used to when she was smaller. Her laughter, clear and bright, rang out across the churchyard. "Mom would love this," Lily whispered, resting her head against his chest. "She would," Jack agreed softly, thinking of how his wife had always believed in the good in people, in the power of community. The string lights swayed gently in the evening breeze, casting dancing shadows on happy faces. Children chased fireflies between the dancers, their giggles mixing with the music. The air was filled with the sound of life, of joy, of hope. For the first time in months, fear had no place here. The laughter that filled the air wasn't nervous or forced. It was real, warm, and free. Under the twinkling lights, as Jack held his daughter close, he saw what his wife had always known, that love and faith could light up even the darkest nights. The crash of shattering glass pierced the quiet evening. Jack's phone buzzed with frantic texts from Tom, who owned the corner market. His fingers tightened around the device as he read, "They're here, breaking everything." Jack moved quickly, his shoulder still tender but healing. He grabbed his jacket and dialed the emergency number they'd set up for the volunteer group. Within minutes, his phone lit up with responses. "On my way," texted Sarah from the bakery. 2 minutes out came from Mike, the high school coach. "Already heading there," Miguel wrote, his former gang ties now turned to helping the town. The market's windows were already destroyed when Jack arrived. Shards of glass glittered under the streetlights like deadly stars. Inside, shadows moved frantically, Razor's men throwing items off shelves and stuffing others into bags. Jack assessed the situation with his military precision. 4 gang members inside, 2 keeping watch outside. Razor himself stood by a black SUV, arms crossed, watching the destruction with satisfaction. Then headlights began appearing from all directions. Cars and trucks pulled up, parking strategically around the market. People emerged, not with weapons, but with determination in their eyes. The volunteers Jack had been training, plus others who'd joined their cause. Mrs. Thompson came with her husband, both in their 60s but standing tall. The local mechanic, still in his oil-stained coveralls. 3 teachers from the high school, even teenage Miguel showed up, though Jack noticed how he stayed partially hidden behind others. They formed a circle around the market, shoulder to shoulder, not advancing, not threatening, just standing firm. A human wall of resistance. The lookouts noticed first, nudging each other nervously. One ducked inside to alert the others. The looting stopped. Gang members emerged one by one, trying to look tough but clearly unsettled by the sight of 30-plus townspeople facing them. "What's this supposed to be?" Razor called out, his voice carrying a forced laugh. "A neighborhood watch meeting?" Jack stepped forward, his stance relaxed but ready. "Just neighbors looking out for neighbors, Razor. That's all." "Looking out for—" Razor's fake amusement turned to anger. "You think these sheep can stop us? These ordinary people?" "Ordinary people built this town," Jack replied calmly. "Ordinary people keep it running, and ordinary people are tired of being afraid." Some of Razor's men shifted uncomfortably, especially when they recognized faces in the crowd. Parents of kids they grew up with, teachers who'd tried to help them, neighbors who used to give them cookies after school. "You're all insane," Razor spat. "Think this changes anything? We'll just come back harder, break more than windows next time." But his words lacked their usual power. The crowd stood firm, silent but united. Jack saw Mrs. Thompson reach out and squeeze the hand of Sarah beside her. Coach Mike nodded encouragingly to some former students in the group. Razor's men started backing toward their vehicles, trying to look casual about it. They clutched their half-filled bags of stolen goods, but their earlier bravado had evaporated. "Boss?" one called uncertainly to Razor. "Maybe we should." "Shut up," Razor snapped, but his control was visibly slipping. He glared at Jack with pure hatred. "You did this. Got them all thinking they're brave now?" Jack shook his head. "They were always brave, Razor. They just needed to remember it." The gang leader's face twisted with rage. He took several steps toward Jack, finger jabbing the air. "You're making them believe in you. I'll break that." Then he turned and stalked back to his SUV. His men scrambled to follow, dropping most of their stolen goods in their haste. Engines roared to life, and the gang's vehicles peeled away into the night. The moment they were gone, the tension broke. People began hugging, laughing with relief. Tom emerged from where he'd been hiding in the market's back room, tears in his eyes as he thanked everyone. Jack watched the community come together, helping Tom sweep up glass and set shelves right. Mrs. Thompson was already making lists of what supplies they'd need to board up the windows until repairs could be made. Coach Mike organized some students to salvage what inventory they could, but Jack kept his eyes on the direction Razor had gone, the gang leader's threat echoing in his mind. Across the empty street, the shadow seemed to hold that final snarl. "I'll break that." This was far from over, but tonight, at least, the town had shown its true strength. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through Jack's bedroom window as he sat on the edge of his bed, a wooden box open before him. Inside, his seal medals caught the light, their golden surfaces still bright despite the years. His calloused fingers traced the edges of each one, memories flooding back with every touch. The bronze star felt heavy in his palm. He remembered the night he earned it, a mission gone sideways in a foreign desert. His team had stuck together, just like his town was doing now. Some of those brothers weren't around anymore, but their lessons lived on. "Dad?" Lily's soft voice came from the doorway. She stood there in her favorite blue sweater, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. "What are those?" Jack managed a small smile. "Just some old memories, sweetheart." He patted the space next to him on the bed. Lily sat down, leaning against his arm as she peered into the box. Her fingers hovered over the medals but didn't touch them, as if they were sacred things. "Did you get these when you were a SEAL?" "Yeah." Jack picked up his trident pin, the symbol every SEAL received upon completing training. Each one tells a story. Stories about standing up for what's right, protecting people who needed help. Lily was quiet for a moment, her eyes studying her father's face. "Are you scared, Dad, about what's happening in town?" The question hung in the air. Jack could have brushed it off, given her the standard "everything will be fine" response. Instead, he took a deep breath. "Yes, honey, I am scared." "Really?" Her eyes widened slightly. "But you're so brave." Jack wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Being brave doesn't mean you're never afraid. It means you keep going anyway. You know what helps me?" "What?" "Faith." Jack picked up his dog tags, which had a small cross engraved on them. Faith in God. Faith in good people. Faith that doing the right thing matters even when it's hard. Lily nodded slowly, understanding beyond her years showing in her eyes. "Like how everyone's helping now?" "Exactly like that." Jack smiled, tucking the dog tags back into the box. "When people stand together, amazing things can happen." A knock at the front door interrupted their moment. Jack tensed slightly, but relaxed when he heard Miguel's familiar voice calling out. "Stay here, sweetheart," Jack said, setting the box aside. He found Miguel on the porch, looking nervous and out of breath. "Mr. Hayes," Miguel glanced over his shoulder before stepping inside. "I had to come tell you Razor's planning something big." Jack led him to the kitchen, away from where Lily might overhear. "What kind of big, Miguel?" The teenager's hands trembled slightly as he accepted a glass of water. "He's angry. More than I've ever seen him. The way everyone's standing up to him, he says he's going to make an example. Show everyone what happens when they cross him." Jack's jaw tightened. "Did you hear any specifics?" "No, he doesn't trust me much anymore." Miguel's voice was heavy with guilt. "But he's getting more guys from out of town, and they've got more weapons." "You did the right thing coming to tell me," Jack assured him, seeing the fear in the boy's eyes. "Go home now. Stay safe. I'll handle this." After Miguel left, Jack immediately called Pastor Green. The pastor answered on the first ring. "Samuel, we need to step up our preparations," Jack said, keeping his voice low. "Razor's planning something major." "I'll spread the word," the pastor replied grimly. "The church basement is yours whenever you need it." Jack spent the next hour making calls, organizing extra training sessions for the volunteers. They'd need to be ready not for revenge, but for protection. His old SEAL training kicked in, planning defensive strategies and escape routes. Later that evening, Jack stood in Lily's doorway, watching her get ready for bed. She wore her favorite pajamas with little stars on them, looking so innocent despite everything happening around them. "Dad?" she called as she climbed under her covers. "Will you pray with me?" Jack sat on the edge of her bed, taking her small hand in his. They bowed their heads together, and Jack's voice was steady as he prayed. "Lord, watch over our family, our friends, our town. Give us strength to face whatever comes. Help us remember that love is stronger than hate, that faith is stronger than fear. Amen," Lily whispered. Jack tucked the blankets around her and kissed her forehead. "Sweet dreams, sweetheart. I love you, Dad. I love you too, more than anything." Jack stood and moved to the window, adjusting the curtains. His trained eyes caught movement in the shadows across the street, dark figures trying to stay hidden behind parked cars. Razor's men, watching his house. He kept his face neutral, not wanting to alarm Lily, but his mind was already calculating. They were getting bolder, closer. He pulled the curtains shut, blocking out the lurking threats outside. For now, Lily was safe in her bed, her breathing already evening out toward sleep. Jack would keep watch, as he had done so many nights before in far-off lands. But this time, the battlefield was his own hometown, and the stakes felt even higher. The autumn afternoon was mild, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of fallen leaves. Jack stood on Mrs. Peterson's worn wooden porch, hammer in hand, showing Miguel and 2 other volunteers how to replace the rotting boards. The elderly widow had been too afraid to fix it herself, with Razor's gang prowling the streets. "See here?" Jack pointed to a weathered joint. "We need to reinforce this section first. The whole structure depends on it being strong." His voice was steady, patient. The same tone he'd used countless times training young SEALs. Miguel nodded eagerly, soaking up every word. The teenager had thrown himself into helping the community since leaving Razor's gang, as if trying to make up for his past mistakes. "Like this, Mr. Hayes?" He positioned a new board carefully. "That's perfect." Jack smiled, proud of the boy's progress. "Mrs. Peterson won't have to worry about—" A high-pitched scream cut through the air. Jack's heart stopped. He knew that voice. "Lily!" The hammer clattered to the porch as he spun around. 2 blocks away, he caught a glimpse of his daughter's purple backpack as she struggled against 3 men dragging her toward a dark van. Her blonde hair flashed in the sunlight as she fought back. "Dad!" Her terrified cry shattered something deep inside him. Jack launched himself off the porch, barely feeling the impact as his feet hit the ground. His muscles burned as he sprinted down the street, pushing himself harder than he had since his SEAL days, but the distance seemed endless. "Let her go!" His voice roared across the neighborhood, causing several people to emerge from their homes. The van's engine revved. Jack saw Razor's sneering face in the passenger window as Lily was roughly shoved inside. The door slammed shut with a horrible finality. "No!" Jack's legs pumped faster, his lungs screaming for air. The van peeled away from the curb, tires squealing on asphalt. He chased it for 2 blocks, desperation giving him impossible speed, but the van gained distance. His daughter's face appeared in the back window, tears streaming down her cheeks as she pounded against the glass. "Lily!" The cry tore from his throat as the van turned a corner and disappeared. Jack stumbled to a stop in the middle of the street, his whole body trembling. His knees gave out, and he collapsed onto the rough pavement. The world spun around him as memories of his wife's death crashed through his mind. The same helplessness, the same crushing fear of losing someone he loved. "Please," he whispered, his forehead touching the ground. "God, don't take her too." His phone buzzed in his pocket. With shaking hands, he pulled it out, knowing who it would be before he answered. "Hayes." Razor's voice dripped with satisfaction. "Missing something? If you hurt her." Jack's voice was raw with rage and terror. "Shut up and listen." Razor cut him off. "Your daughter's fine, for now. But here's how this goes. You leave town. Tonight. No goodbyes, no heroic last stand. Just disappear. If you don't." He let the threat hang in the air. Jack's free hand clenched into a fist. "Let me talk to her." "Dad?" Lily's voice was shaky but strong. "Dad, I'm okay, don't—" The phone crackled as Razor took it back. "You have until midnight. Leave town or you'll never see her again." The line went dead. Jack stayed on his knees in the street, the phone still pressed to his ear. The autumn breeze felt cold now, cutting through his thin work shirt. Behind him, he could hear running footsteps. Miguel and the other volunteers rushing to help. Neighbors were gathering, their voices a distant buzz of concern and fear. But all he could focus on was the empty street where the van had disappeared. His little girl, his whole world, was gone. The thought of leaving town, abandoning everyone who had come to trust him, felt like a knife in his gut. But the thought of losing Lily was unbearable. He pressed his palms against the rough pavement, trying to ground himself in reality. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolled, reminding him of Sunday services with Lily, of her small hand in his during prayers, of her unwavering faith even after losing her mother. "Mr. Hayes?" Miguel's tentative voice broke through his fog of despair. "We're here. We'll help you find her." Jack slowly raised his head, meeting the determined faces of his neighbors. They had formed a circle around him, offering silent support. In their eyes, he saw not just sympathy, but resolve, the same strength he'd been trying to nurture in them these past weeks. But Razor's ultimatum echoed in his mind. Leave town or lose his daughter forever. The choice felt impossible, yet devastatingly simple. What was the point of saving a town if he lost the one person who made his world whole? He closed his eyes, his whispered prayer barely audible. "God, don't take her too." The phone felt heavy in his hand as the reality of Razor's threat sank in. Hours remained until midnight. Hours to make an impossible choice between his daughter and the community that had become their home. The autumn wind carried distant laughter from the park where Lily had played just yesterday, the sound now a cruel reminder of what he stood to lose. The empty church was dark except for moonlight filtering through stained glass windows, casting colored shadows across the wooden pews. Jack Hayes sat alone in the front row, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. His calloused hands gripped the back of the pew in front of him until his knuckles turned white. "I failed her," he whispered hoarsely. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I failed our little girl." The silence of the church pressed in around him. Memories of Lily's smile, her laughter, her drawings of him as a superhero, they all twisted like knives in his heart. The sound of her scream as Razor's men dragged her into that van echoed in his mind, torturing him. The creak of the heavy wooden door broke through his anguish, Soft footsteps approached down the center aisle, but Jack didn't turn around. He recognized Pastor Green's measured stride. "I thought I might find you here," the pastor said quietly, settling into the pew beside Jack. He didn't try to touch him or offer empty words of comfort. He simply sat in shared silence for several long moments. "I should have known they'd target her," Jack finally spoke, his voice rough with emotion. "I was so focused on protecting everyone else, I didn't." "This isn't your fault, Jack," Pastor Green said firmly. "This is the act of evil men who prey on innocence." Jack's fist slammed against the pew. "I'm supposed to protect her. I promised Sarah when she died that I'd keep our daughter safe. Now Razor has her, and if I don't leave town—" His voice broke. The pastor's eyes were kind but determined. "Do you remember what you taught Miguel last week? About what true strength means? This is different." "Is it?" Pastor Green pressed. "You told him that real strength isn't about fighting alone. It's about standing together, about protecting family." Jack closed his eyes as memories washed over him. Not of Lily this time, but of his SEAL team. Brothers who had lived and died by their sacred code. Never leave family behind. Never abandon your own. "My SEAL brothers," Jack whispered. "We promised each other, no matter what." "And you're not alone now either," the pastor reminded him gently. "This whole town, we're your family too, Lily's family. Every person you've trained, every soul you've inspired to stand up against fear, they're all waiting to help bring her home." Jack lifted his head slowly, something shifting in his chest. The crushing weight of failure began to lighten, replaced by a familiar clarity of purpose. He remembered the faces of his neighbors at training sessions, their determination growing stronger each day. He thought of Miguel's courage in breaking free from Razor's control, of the elderly women cooking meals, of children drawing signs of hope. "We're stronger together," Pastor Green continued, "just like you've been teaching us. And together, with faith as our shield, we'll bring Lily back." Jack rose from the pew, his spine straightening as resolve hardened in his eyes. His training kicked in, not just the tactical knowledge from his SEAL days, but the deeper wisdom of leading others toward a righteous cause. "Get everyone to the church basement," he said, his voice steady now. "Call Miguel too. He'll know where Razor might be holding her." The pastor nodded, already pulling out his phone. As he turned to leave, Jack caught his arm. "Thank you," Jack said softly, "for reminding me what matters." Within an hour, the church basement hummed with nervous energy as dozens of townspeople gathered. Men and women Jack had trained stood tall, their faces set with determination. Miguel huddled in a corner with a map of the town, marking possible locations. Elderly Mrs. Peterson was there too, distributing cups of hot coffee with shaking hands. Jack stood before them, his heart swelling at their unified presence. This was what he'd been preparing them for. Though he'd never imagined the stakes would be so personal, his voice carried clearly through the basement as he spoke. "Tonight we take back what's ours," he declared, his words ringing with quiet authority. "We bring Lily home." The crowd straightened, drawing strength from his certainty. Even Mrs. Peterson set down her coffee pot and stood taller. Jack saw in their eyes the same fire he'd once seen in his SEAL team. The unwavering commitment to protect their own, no matter the cost. They weren't just neighbors anymore. They were family. And family, Jack knew with bone-deep certainty, never leaves anyone behind. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of deep orange and purple as Jack Hayes led a silent procession through the streets of their small town. Behind him walked nearly 200 people, shopkeepers, teachers, farmers, and families, all carrying flashlights and whatever tools they could find. Mrs. Rodriguez from the bakery clutched her rolling pin. Old Mr. Thompson had his gardening shovel. The high school football coach carried a baseball bat. No guns, no weapons of war. Just ordinary people with extraordinary courage. Jack's heart thundered in his chest as they approached the abandoned warehouse at the edge of town. The massive building loomed against the darkening sky, its broken windows like hollow eyes staring down at them. Graffiti covered its walls, and Razor's gang symbol, a blood-red blade, was spray-painted across the rusted metal doors. "Remember what we practiced," Jack said softly, his voice carrying to those nearest him. "Stay together, watch each other's backs. We're not here for revenge, we're here for Lily." The words spread through the crowd in whispers. Jack saw Miguel, the former gang member, trembling slightly but standing tall beside Mrs. Peterson, his elderly neighbor who had been bringing him cookies every Sunday since he left Razor's crew. As they drew closer, shadows moved in the darkness around the warehouse. Razor's men emerged from behind abandoned cars and piles of debris, their faces a mixture of sneers and uncertainty. Some held chains, others brandished bats and pipes. But their usual swagger faltered as they took in the size of the crowd approaching them. "That's far enough," one of them shouted, trying to sound tough, but his voice cracked. Jack raised his hand, and the townsfolk stopped. In perfect unison, they all switched on their flashlights, creating a wall of light that illuminated the gang members' faces. Jack had taught them this: light drives out darkness, reveals fear, makes the threatening seem smaller. "We're here for my daughter," Jack called out, his voice steady and clear in the evening air. "All of us. Your boss took one of our children. We won't let that stand." Some of the gang members shifted uncomfortably, looking at each other. They were used to terrorizing people who were alone and afraid. But this wall of determined faces, this unified front of an entire community, this was different. "You think bringing a bunch of old ladies and shopkeepers scares us?" another gang member taunted, but his eyes kept darting between faces in the crowd. Jack took a step forward. "Look around you," he said, not in threat, but in simple truth. "Look at their faces. Every person here has someone they love inside that warehouse. Every person here has watched you hurt their neighbors, destroy their shops, threaten their children, but they're not here for revenge. They're here because love is stronger than fear." The words hung in the air. Behind Jack, Mrs. Rodriguez started humming Amazing Grace. Others joined in, the hymn growing stronger, echoing off the warehouse walls. The gang members looked increasingly unsettled. "Boss ain't gonna like this," one muttered. "Boss ain't out here facing this," another responded under his breath. Jack caught Miguel's eye and gave him a slight nod. The boy stepped forward, his voice shaking but clear. "I used to think being in the gang made me strong, but real strength? It's standing right here." He gestured to the crowd. "These people, they feed you when you're hungry. They help when you're hurt. They forgive when you're wrong. That's real strength." More gang members shifted uneasily. One dropped his chain, another backed away. The wall of darkness around the warehouse began to crack. Jack moved forward again, the crowd following in perfect synchronization, their lights never wavering. They had practiced this for hours in the church basement, moving as one, standing firm, showing neither aggression nor fear. "Last chance," Jack announced. "Step aside, go home. There's a place for you in this community if you want it. But we're going in there, and we're bringing Lily out." The remaining gang members looked at each other. Their numbers were thinning as more slipped away into the shadows. Those who stayed seemed more uncertain by the second. Jack turned to the crowd. "Wait here," he said quietly. "If I'm not out in 20 minutes, Pastor Mike knows what to do." The pastor nodded grimly, holding his Bible close to his chest. Facing the warehouse doors, Jack squared his shoulders. The time for leading others was done. This part he had to do alone, not as a SEAL, not as a community leader, but as a father. "Razor!" His voice boomed across the yard, echoing off the metal walls. "I'm coming in, just you and me now." The massive doors creaked slightly in the evening breeze, like a monster waiting to swallow him whole. But Jack Hayes had faced monsters before, in deserts and mountains far from home. This time was different. This time, he had an entire town at his back, their lights holding the darkness at bay, their prayers lifting him up. He walked forward, his footsteps crunching on broken glass and gravel. Behind him, the hymn grew stronger, voices raised in hope and defiance. The crowd's flashlights cast his shadow long before him, a single figure moving toward the warehouse doors, unarmed but unafraid. The door handle was cold under his palm. Jack took one deep breath, remembered his daughter's smile, and pulled it open. Darkness gaped beyond. "Razor!" he called again, stepping into the shadows. "Let's talk." The warehouse interior was a maze of shadows and rusted metal columns. Jack's footsteps echoed against the concrete floor as he moved deeper inside, his trained eyes adjusting to the dim light filtering through broken windows high above. The air smelled of dust and motor oil, remnants of the building's industrial past. "Razor!" Jack's voice bounced off the walls. "Show yourself!" A harsh laugh cut through the darkness. "The hero arrives." Razor's voice dripped with mockery. He emerged from behind a stack of old crates, shoving Lily roughly in front of him as a human shield. Her hands were tied, but her eyes blazed with defiance, even as tears streaked her cheeks. "Daddy," she whispered. "It's okay, sweetheart," Jack said softly, his heart aching at seeing her afraid. "Everything's going to be all right." Razor's gang members materialized from the shadows, forming a loose circle around them. Some carried chains, others baseball bats. Their faces showed a mix of bravado and uncertainty as they glanced between their leader and the former Navy SEAL. "You really think you can walk in here and play hero?" Razor pressed a knife against Lily's shoulder, making her flinch. "Look around, Hayes. You're outnumbered." Jack kept his voice steady, letting years of SEAL training guide his words. "Am I? Take a look outside, Marcus." Razor's eye twitched at the use of his real name. Through the warehouse's broken windows, the glow of hundreds of flashlights illuminated the gathering darkness. The entire town had come. "You think those sheep scare me?" Razor's laugh held a note of hysteria. "They're nothing." "They're everything you're not," Jack replied calmly. "They're brave enough to stand together, to protect their own. Unlike you, hiding behind a little girl with your knife." Several gang members shifted uncomfortably. Miguel, standing near the back, took a small step away from Razor's group. "Shut up," Razor's face contorted. "I own this town. They fear me." "No," Jack shook his head. "They pity you, just like your own men do. They see what I see, a scared boy trying to look tough. Real strength isn't about making people afraid. It's about standing up for what's right, even when you're terrified." More gang members began backing away. Razor's eyes darted frantically between them. "What are you doing?" he screamed. "Get him! Now!" Nobody moved. The warehouse fell silent, except for Razor's heavy breathing. "Miguel," Jack called out. "Remember what we talked about? About choices?" Miguel nodded slowly, then stepped fully away from Razor's group. "I'm done," he said quietly. "This isn't right." Like a dam breaking, other gang members followed. One by one, they lowered their weapons. Some simply walked away. Others moved to stand behind Jack. "Cowards!" Razor's voice cracked. "You're all cowards!" "Let her go, Marcus," Jack said softly. "It's over." Razor's face twisted into something feral. With a roar, he shoved Lily aside and lunged at Jack with his knife. But Jack was ready. Years of combat training took over as he sidestepped the wild attack. His hand caught Razor's wrist, applying precise pressure to the tendons until the knife clattered to the floor. Razor swung with his other fist, but his technique was sloppy. All rage and no discipline. Jack blocked the punch and used Razor's own momentum to spin him around. In seconds, he had the gang leader face down on the concrete, one arm locked behind his back. "I could break your arm right now," Jack said calmly, maintaining the hold. "Could have done a lot worse, but that's not who I am. That's not what this town stands for." Razor struggled weakly, but Jack's grip was like iron. The gang leader's facade crumbled, and suddenly he looked very young and very afraid. Several townsfolk had entered the warehouse, including the local police chief who had been too intimidated to act before. He approached with handcuffs ready. "Your choice, Marcus," Jack said, "but this ends tonight." Jack kept Razor pinned firmly against the cold concrete floor, his knee pressing into the gang leader's back. Years of SEAL training made the hold effortless, despite Razor's desperate struggles. The warehouse air hung heavy with tension as gang members watched their invincible leader reduced to helpless thrashing. "Let me go," Razor snarled, his face pressed against the dusty floor. "I'll kill you all." "No, you won't," Jack said calmly. His voice carried across the warehouse, steady and clear. "You're done hurting people." Miguel stepped forward from the crowd of gang members, his hands trembling as he dropped his brass knuckles. The metal clattered loudly on the concrete floor, the sound echoing through the cavernous space. Other gang members shifted uneasily, looking at each other with uncertainty in their eyes. "Your leader talked big about loyalty." Jack addressed the group, maintaining his hold on Razor. "But real loyalty isn't built on fear. Look at him now, all that tough talk, and he used a little girl as a shield." Several more weapons hit the ground. Switchblades, chains, brass knuckles. The metallic sounds rang out like a symphony of surrender. Young faces, some barely older than 16, showed a mix of shame and relief. "You're all nothing," Razor screamed, spittle flying from his mouth. "Cowards! After everything I did for you." "What did you do for them?" Jack's question cut through Razor's ranting. "You took scared kids and made them more scared. You took their pain and turned it into violence. That's not protection. That's poison." From outside, the sound of approaching sirens grew louder. Red and blue lights began to flash through the high warehouse windows, casting dancing shadows across the walls. More gang members backed away from their fallen leader. "Each of you has a choice right now," Jack continued, his voice gentler now. "The police are coming. Those who stay, who want to make things right. I'll speak for you. The church has programs, people who want to help. You're not alone." Miguel moved closer to Jack, his young face set with determination. "I'm staying," he declared. "I want to make things right." One by one, other gang members stepped forward. Some were crying, others stood tall with newfound dignity. A few ran for the back exits, disappearing into the night, but most remained. "Look at them leaving you," Jack said quietly to Razor, who had gone still beneath his hold. "This is what happens when you build an empire on fear. Fear fades. Truth remains." The warehouse doors burst open as police officers flooded in, weapons drawn. They moved swiftly to secure the scene, but found mostly young men with their hands raised, ready to surrender. Two officers approached Jack and Razor. "We can take him now, sir," one said respectfully. Jack nodded and smoothly transferred Razor to the officer's custody. They pulled the gang leader to his feet and cuffed him. Razor's carefully maintained image of strength had crumbled completely. His hair disheveled, his face streaked with dirt and angry tears. "This isn't over," Razor screamed as the officers began leading him away. His voice cracked with desperation. "You can't just— I own this town! I'm the one they fear!" "Not anymore," Jack said simply. The officers dragged Razor toward the exit. His boots scraped against the concrete as he tried to resist, but his strength was nothing against their firm grip. His screams of defiance turned to wails of defeat, echoing through the warehouse until the police car door slammed shut behind him. The remaining gang members stood in small groups, talking quietly with other officers. Some were giving statements, others were being consoled by crisis counselors who had arrived on scene. The feared gang that had terrorized the town was dissolving before everyone's eyes. Miguel approached Jack, his eyes red, but his head held high. "Those programs you mentioned, at the church, could you tell me more about them?" Jack placed a gentle hand on the young man's shoulder. "First thing tomorrow morning, I promise." Outside, dawn was breaking over the warehouse district. The first rays of sunlight streamed through the windows, washing away the shadows that had hidden so much fear and pain. In their place, something new was emerging, the first fragile threads of hope and healing for a community ready to rebuild. The night that had started with a father's desperate search for his daughter was ending with a deeper kind of rescue. As Jack watched the young men talking with counselors and officers, he saw not the hardened criminals they'd pretended to be, but the wounded children they truly were. Children who, like his own daughter, deserved a chance at a better future. Around him, the warehouse that had been Razor's last stronghold was transforming into something else. A place of surrender, yes, but also of redemption. The weapons scattered across the floor were being collected as evidence, while the young men who had wielded them were being guided toward a different path. The iron grip of fear that Razor had maintained over the town was broken. His screams from the police car grew fainter and finally fell silent. The gang that had seemed invincible just hours before had crumbled like a house of cards, leaving behind a group of young men ready to rebuild their lives from the ruins of their mistakes. Jack watched as the last police cars pulled away, their sirens silent now. The warehouse that had been full of shadows and threats stood empty and quiet, ready to be reclaimed by the light of a new day. The night of fear was over, and the real work of healing could begin. Outside the warehouse, the first tints of morning light painted the sky in soft purple hues. Jack burst through the heavy metal doors with Lily in his arms, his heart pounding with relief and gratitude. The moment they emerged, he dropped to his knees, pulling her into a fierce embrace that spoke of countless worried hours and desperate prayers. Lily's small frame shook with sobs against his chest. "Daddy," she choked out between tears, her fingers clutching his shirt. "I was so scared. I thought I'd never see you again." Jack pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, wiping away her tears with gentle thumbs. His own eyes glistened with emotion. "Listen to me, sweetheart. I will always come for you. Always." His voice cracked slightly, but his words carried the weight of an unshakable promise. The gathering crowd of townspeople erupted in cheers and applause. Mrs. Rodriguez, who ran the corner bakery, wiped tears from her eyes with her apron. "Mr." Chen from the hardware store pumped his fist in the air. Even the usually stoic Pastor Williams was openly weeping with joy. Miguel hung back uncertainly at the edge of the celebration, his shoulders hunched as if trying to make himself smaller. Jack noticed and gestured for him to come closer. "You helped make this possible," he said firmly, including the young man in their circle. "I don't deserve—" Miguel started to protest, but Lily interrupted him. "You brought me water," she said softly. "And you told them not to hurt me." The young man's eyes welled with tears. "I should have done more. Should have done it sooner." Jack placed a steady hand on Miguel's shoulder. "You chose right when it mattered most. That's what counts." People began gathering around them in waves of relief and celebration. Mrs. Jenkins, who taught 3rd grade at Lily's school, rushed forward to envelope both Jack and Lily in a warm hug. "We were all so worried," she exclaimed, her voice thick with emotion. The Martinez family brought forward blankets they'd kept in their car, wrapping one around Lily's shoulders. Their teenage son, Tony, who used to run with Razor's crew before Jack's training sessions changed his path, stood tall with pride in his clean clothes and newly purposeful stance. "The police have Razor in custody," announced Officer Thompson, approaching the group. "And most of his followers have scattered. The ones who stayed are turning themselves in." He shook Jack's hand firmly. "You did what we couldn't, Hayes. You gave this town its courage back." Lily hadn't let go of her father's hand, and now she squeezed it tighter. "Can we go home, Dad?" "Of course, sweetheart." Jack stood, keeping her close. "But first, there's somewhere we need to stop." The crowd parted as Jack led Lily toward his truck, Miguel following close behind. Others began dispersing too, heading toward their cars or walking in small groups, their voices carrying notes of relief and joy into the brightening morning air. The drive to the church was quiet, the streets still mostly empty in the early dawn light. When they arrived, several cars were already in the parking lot. People had gravitated here instinctively, drawn to this place of refuge and thanksgiving. Pastor Williams stood at the top of the church steps, waiting. His weathered face broke into a warm smile as Jack helped Lily from the truck. "The prodigal daughter returns," he said softly, opening his arms to her. Lily ran up the steps to hug him, and the pastor's eyes met Jack's over her head. Both men shared a look of profound understanding, the weight of responsibility, the power of faith, the miracle of community. More people began arriving, drawn by an unspoken call. The hardware store owner and his wife, the elderly couple who lived across from the park, teachers from Lily's school, former gang members who had chosen a better path. They filled the church steps and spilled onto the lawn, their presence a testament to the bonds that had grown stronger through adversity. Miguel stood awkwardly to the side until Mrs. Rodriguez grabbed his hand and pulled him into the group. "You're family now, Mijo," she said firmly, and the young man's face transformed with tentative hope. The sky had lightened to a pale blue when the first bell began to toll. Its clear, pure note rang out across the town, carrying a message of victory and new beginnings. Another bell joined in, and another, their harmonious pealing filling the morning air with joyful music. Lily leaned against her father, her face peaceful for the first time since her ordeal began. "Listen, Dad," she whispered. "The bells sound happy today." Jack wrapped his arm around her shoulders, drawing her close. He looked out over the gathered crowd, his neighbors, his friends, his community, people who had found their strength and rediscovered their faith, people who had learned to stand together against darkness. The bells continued their celebration as dawn broke fully over the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant golds and pinks. Their song rang out across rooftops and through streets, announcing to everyone that a new day had begun for their town, a day of hope, of courage, and of unity. The late afternoon sun cast golden rays through the newly installed windows of the youth center. Fresh paint gleamed on the walls where gang graffiti had once marked their territory. Children's laughter echoed through the halls, a sound that had been absent for far too long. Jack stood near the entrance, watching the scene unfold before him with quiet contentment. His shoulder had finally healed, though he still felt a twinge when the weather changed. But today, there was no pain, only warmth in his heart as he observed his transformed community. The smell of home-cooked dishes filled the air. Tables lined the walls, loaded with casseroles, pies, and Mrs. Martinez's famous enchiladas. Church ladies bustled about, making sure every plate stayed full. Even Miguel, wearing a clean button-down shirt instead of gang colors, helped serve lemonade to younger kids. "Want some potato salad, Mr. Hayes?" called out elderly Mrs. Wilson, waving from behind one of the serving tables. "Made it special, just like you mentioned your Sarah used to make it." Jack smiled and nodded, touched by the gesture. "Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. I'll be sure to try some." The basketball court had been transformed into a dance floor, string lights crisscrossing overhead just like the night of their first celebration. But this time, they twinkled without the shadow of fear. Someone had hung a banner that read, "Our Town, Our Family," in bright letters. Pastor Mike approached Jack, clapping him on the shoulder. "Quite a difference from a few months ago, isn't it?" "Sure is," Jack replied, watching as former gang members played basketball with local kids. "Those boys just needed someone to believe in them." "They needed you to believe in them," Pastor Mike corrected gently. "God puts the right people in the right places, Jack. You being here wasn't an accident." Before Jack could respond, Lily bounded up to them, her blue dress swirling. Her eyes sparkled with joy, the haunted look from her kidnapping completely gone now. "Dad! Come on, they're playing our song!" The opening notes of "What a Wonderful World" filled the air. It had been Sarah's favorite, the song they'd danced to at their wedding. Now it was his and Lily's song too, bridging past and present with its gentle melody. Jack let his daughter pull him onto the dance floor. She'd grown taller in the past months, or maybe she just stood straighter now, unafraid. He took her hand in his and placed his other hand on her shoulder, just like Sarah had taught him to dance years ago. "Remember when you first taught me to dance here?" Lily asked as they swayed. "I kept stepping on your feet." "You've gotten much better," Jack chuckled, "though I think my toes are still recovering." Around them, other families joined in the dancing. Mr. Rodriguez, whose store had been one of the first targeted by the gang, now waltzed with his wife, their faces peaceful. Some of the younger kids attempted to copy the adults, spinning in wobbly circles and giggling. The string lights above cast soft shadows on Lily's face, reminding Jack so much of her mother. She had Sarah's gentle spirit, her way of finding light in the darkest places. "You know what, Dad?" Lily said softly. "I used to wish we could move away from here. But now, I don't want to be anywhere else." "Me neither, sweetheart," Jack replied, his voice thick with emotion. "This is home." They danced in comfortable silence for a while, the music washing over them. Jack caught glimpses of their community. Miguel helping an elderly couple to their seats, Pastor Mike praying with a group in the corner, children racing between tables with sparklers leaving trails of light in their wake. The song began to fade, but Lily held onto her father's hand. She looked up at him, her eyes shining with tears and pride. "Mom would be proud of you," she whispered. Jack's vision blurred as he lifted his gaze to the evening sky visible through the windows. The first stars were appearing, twinkling like Sarah's eyes used to. His heart swelled with gratitude. For his daughter's safety, for their community's healing, for the peace that had finally settled over their lives like a warm blanket. He could almost feel Sarah's presence, her approval of the man he'd become, the father he was to their daughter. The tears that fell now weren't from grief or fear, but from a profound thankfulness for the journey that had brought them here. Through the window, the sunset painted the sky in brilliant shades of pink and gold, as if heaven itself was celebrating with them. Jack held his daughter close, knowing that their family, both immediate and extended to include their entire town, had finally found the peace they'd been searching for. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Jack Hayes, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.